Hello, everybody. Welcome to something new that we have going on here. Bree, how are you today?
I'm so great, Jamie. How are you?
I'm good. You guys might notice that someone is on the screen with us pouring himself a beer. And, Bobby is a longtime friend of ours through the podcast. We've all never met in person one day. But Bobby has this immense passion for the alien topic, UFOs, cryptids, Bigfoots, you name it. He's really into it. And he tries sometimes to talk about it on his podcast. He has this thing called Bobby's Cryptid Corner. And his co host just refuses to let him talk about anything Bigfoot or anything paranormal. So we thought, why don't we steal Bobby and the segment and just turn it into a new fun thing for you guys? And Bobby can really shine here and like show his true passion. And I think you guys are going to be ridiculously surprised about how knowledgeable he is about this kind of stuff and how much research he does. So, Bobby, welcome to the motherfucking show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jamie and Bree. It's great to be here. Let's not get carried away with that expertise stuff. I would say that I am into Bigfoot as much as you guys are into UFOs and aliens, and you're probably into Bigfoot as much as I'm into UFOs and aliens. Does that make
Ooh,
sense?
interesting.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
So I
So then
think
you
this,
would be an expert.
well, that's subjective, I guess. I guess there's no real like qualifications for really any of these, especially like recognized by mainstream academia. So armchair researcher, I guess, is more legit than most people who are not even willing to look into it. So
Absolutely. So, Bree, we have to have a conversation because on a few episodes back, you had made some comments about Bigfoot. And I think that we, one, need to clarify about Bree's stance on Bigfoot. And then we also need to talk about the YouTube drama where people have been calling you out about Bigfoot.
I know. What is up with that? Okay, so
So explain yourself because people think that you hate Bigfoot. I see comments online that says, "Oh yeah, one of those girls hates Bigfoot."
I
I thought
don't
you
know
hated
where that
Bigfoot.
came from. Okay, I thought I made it very clear. I said I want to believe, I just don't know if I took a lie detector test where, you have to really 100% believe how you feel. I don't know if I would pass if I said yes. Like there's a skeptical part of me. But there's no part of me that hates Bigfoot. I've gone Bigfoot hunting with other people that are quite professional in, the whole realm and have even been on like Finding Bigfoot and stuff on TV. And I've seen casts of Bigfoot that I thought were very believable. I've heard sounds from Bigfoot as well. I just have a skeptical side of me, that's all.
And that's understandable. But I think what we're going to do here today with this first episode is we're going to make it so that if you did take a lie detector test, you knew Bigfoot was real.
But here's my
I'm
thing
not
with
here to
that
be
though.
false,
Yeah,
Jamie.
well, yeah. One thing that I did say on that episode where we brought it up was that I think you have to have your own experience with something to fully believe in it. And obviously with aliens and UFOs, I've had plenty of my own experiences. And I haven't had my own with Bigfoot. I haven't like been in the presence of a Bigfoot. So I really don't believe that I will lose that skeptical side until that happens.
That's respectable.
That's super interesting because you are open to more fringy things.
Yeah. Well, that's what I
I
mean. I'm
get
definitely open to it. I just think I
right.
have to be in the presence and be like, oh shit, this thing is 100% real. I like believing in the idea. How about that?
Have you ever seen a panda bear in the wild?
That's like the God argument when people are like, do you believe
Yeah,
in God? No. Do you believe in $1 million? Yes. Have you seen $1 million? No.
right. So it all boils down to the messaging you've received by the institutions or the population, the consensus to accept these types of things. I'm just here. I'm just kind of agnostic about everything. I'm kind of to be honest, I'm confessing that I'm a lot like you, Bree, in that sense. Like I'm just more interested in it than like want it to be real or don't want it to be real. Um, Part of me wants this stuff to remain a mystery so that we have
Mm-hmm.
podcasts to record. You know what I mean?
Well, not
So
only
yeah,
that, but people that want to hunt Bigfoot to like shoot it. And I like that aspect that he seems to be very elusive. I would never want us to actually capture a Bigfoot. I think that would be super fucked up.
Sure.
I agree. Okay, so in that realm then, what is it that Bigfoot is, right? Like, is Bigfoot this Yeti, this bear? Is it this ghost kind of thing? Is it
Mhm.
this
Well,
alien or this extra dimensional being? Like, what do you guys think it could possibly be?
the short answer to that is I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can do is I can give you some consistent, relatively consistent physical attributes and
Okay.
locational attributes that fall in line with every camp, really, of what people believe it may be.
Okay.
So just to get this out of the way, not to insult anyone in your audience's intelligence on the elusive Sasquatch, traditionally 6 to 10 feet tall, right? I've read reports of taller, 12, 15 at times, but when you're in that moment, let me ask you this. You guys have witnessed alien stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you were at a cognizant place to like take in everything you were experiencing?
No, absolutely not. And we've made comments about this before, especially in the UFO field. Like when people are very specific about how tall or how far something was away, we always call bullshit because there's no way that you know those type of things or you remember those things. You weren't thinking about that shit when you were experiencing whatever happens. So
Right.
we tend to have like it's a tall tale sign when someone is very specific, like, oh, it was exactly 5'4". It's like, your
No, you
story
didn't
might be
have a tape
stretching it.
measure. You did
Exactly.
not bring a tape measure.
Yeah. So your brain, like you think about how um, eyewitness accounts in court doesn't hold up nearly as
Yep.
as hard physical evidence, and a lot of that has to do with like okay, you as the witness just saw something incredible, and this is just like in court, it's just like real world stuff, like things that
Mm-hmm.
we know do happen. So someone witnesses a murder, that's still not something someone sees every day, but they know that happens, right? With Bigfoot, um it's that plus this isn't supposed to exist, and probably
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
aliens and UFOs to some degree as well. But the consistencies here are a little too consistent. So 6 to 11 feet tall, covered in hair, not fur. Okay, so a lot of people will be very specific about that. It wasn't fur. It wasn't like a bear or a dog. It's like almost like a nappy human hair, right? Coloring is usually auburn, brown, black. There's reports of like gray and white ones, and I feel like there's a few blonde ones as well. Um, and then a lot of the reports claim that the face is more like human with a pronounced brow, with a hooded nose. And then there's other reports that claim it looks more like an ape. So it kind of runs the gamut, and there's all kinds of different subcategories or subspecies, if you will, of the various ones. The primary one that we think of as Bigfoot or Sasquatch is that classic Northern California, Pacific Northwest, 6 to 11 foot tall, auburn beast in the woods there. But we'll get
Does
into
the
the.
Dogman fit into that category too?
I don't know why, but I don't dislike the dog man, but I just don't dive into it. I don't gravitate towards it as much, but it falls into it as far as a cryptid goes. Um, a lot of people think that the dog man is either demonic or interdimensional or something more esoteric than a flesh and blood creature,
Hmm.
and that does overlap with a lot of the camps within Bigfoot as well.
So interesting.
So what I wanted to do with you guys is just kind of go through the camps of what people believe about this. We'll learn a lot along the way, just in general, but I think you're going to notice a lot of parallels between what's going on in this world and what's going on in the UFO alien world. And what's interesting is there is a merging at some point of those two,
Mm-hmm.
but I still think everything's super tribal in the community, just in UFOs, right? You have like your ancient astronaut people, you got
Mm-hmm.
your abductee people, you got your
nuts and bolts. You have your consciousness
nuts and
people.
bolts
Yeah.
people. Yeah, new age people. It's the same exact thing in the Bigfoot world. So let's talk nuts and bolts. Bigfoot version of Stanton Friedman, nuts and bolts, is going to be the Flesh and Blood Camp. And these are like your Jeff Meldrums of the world. You've probably seen them on any Bigfoot documentary that's ever been out there. And he's actually one of the few like actual academics that's started reason hasn't been shunned by orthodox science. You also have like kind of your BFRO types. A lot of the people on shows like Finding Bigfoot are more don't gravitate into or flirt with the weirder side of things. A lot of this has to do with just maintaining the phenomenon within orthodox science so that like people will maybe at some point, I guess, respect it or acknowledge it or whatever it may be. A big part of the mentality here is like they want to avoid anything more outlandish because the subject is so controversial in and of itself without all these other crazy interdimensional things.
So kind of like I'll believe in Bigfoot,
nuts and bolts people.
Yeah, I'll believe in
That's
Bigfoot,
like in the
but not
UFO
aliens.
world.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The UFO world, those are the nuts and bolts people that don't really deal with like the metaphysical side of things or consciousness aspect. They don't want to mix those because they feel like it contaminates the science of it. So that makes sense.
Yeah. So that said, I mean, that's a big part of, I guess, if you extrapolate that out and close your mind and stay within orthodox science, that's one reason to not cover it up, but like to just dismiss it. So for instance, if they're like, what are some theories as to why UFOs and aliens are being covered up by like mainstream science or media or whatever?
Technology.
Yeah, technology. I think another one would probably monetary
what do you mean by
gain.
technology?
As in, like, especially if there was a crashed craft that we back engineered that. And so if we were to expose that to the world, our adversaries could potentially learn that technology as well.
So
and then
defense.
we would be like, yeah.
Well, and then you also have to think like society
Free energy, too.
Free energy. Society is collapsing because we no longer are under the petrodollar, because oil doesn't matter, because energy is free. So we, if that is a real thing, of course they don't want to tell that to America because it topples their system of economy.
So
it challenges science.
The common thread here is agenda, right?
Yeah.
There's an agenda, even if it's someone that's just a true heart of hearts scientific skeptic, product of the Enlightenment, like someone that just is a no nonsense, there's still an agenda there on some level, right? It's about protecting that no nonsense ideology, or it's about protecting your academic reputation, or it's about, I spent my entire life writing about, whatever, the history of Egypt, and it's been the staple of like the mainstream consensus. And the minute you throw a wrench in that gear, your entire life's work is completely kaput. So there's that. And that same thing with Bigfoot and anthropology and even archaeology and things like that. Biology, obviously, zoology. And then there's also stuff like the lumber industry. There's the whole government thing, like, everything from are these escaped government experiments to the government doesn't want this to get out because it's going to collapse everyone's entire paradigm and the world will like descend into chaos kind of thing, right? So like I think there's a huge Venn diagram there between Bigfoot world and UFO alien world.
I can see it. Definitely.
I can too. So there's this camp that's this like nuts and bolts. So like what other camps are there outside of just more nuts and bolts?
Okay, so let me just go into the theories of the nuts and bolts
tell me
side
then,
of things, or the flesh and blood camp. It's really relic hominid. There was a jawbone found, I believe, in China several decades ago that pointed to the existence of a large ape-like creature now known as Gigantopithecus, though they've never, I don't believe, ever found any other remnants of it. But they designed this ape creature based on this giant jawbone, and there's There's hybrid theories of like relic hominids breeding with humans, which again, this is like the scientific side of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is happening everywhere. This is happening. A big one in Russia is like the Alma, who's supposed to be more like kind of a Neanderthal, like kind of hairy caveman type thing.
Yeah.
Of course, the Yeti or the abominable snowman around Tibet and the Himalayas. You have the Yowie in Australia, which is more or less seems to be a bit more like the one in the Pacific Northwest, or like the more paranormal side of things. But then, you know, you have all this crazy stuff, and you have mainstream science, you know, dismissing it, but science is by design meant to do that, right? It's not just corruption of the institution. It's also like, this is how science works. It's like, we have a hypothesis and more or less try to disprove it rather than prove it. But then you have like, okay, so you have that like camp of like Western rationalism, and then you get people into, you know, colonizing or whatever, and finding these indigenous cultures that are speaking of these creatures in folklore, and then the Westerners kind of dismiss it. It's that kind of thing, but it's like still happening, just not necessarily geographically, just, you know, ideologically, I guess. But the example would be like the gorilla. Like, people didn't really think that there was gorillas before they found them, before white people found them.
Yeah.
Right? The giant squid, the panda bear. There's countless examples of this.
Do these nuts?
I've also heard of like. Oh, sorry.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, I was going to say I've also heard of it.
I love when we do this. You go.
I was going to say I've also heard of it being like the missing link.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's exactly. I was going to be like, do these people also believe that maybe Bigfoot is that missing link, that you know, we never found those bones because Bigfoot is this like missing link in between?
I'm sure that there is that. It seems to be in most camps. I feel like it seems to be more of like like when you look at the evolution, like that classic like staircase evolution picture, it's more like a tree that branches out rather than rather than the stairs that you see. But if you think of it this way, if you want to subscribe to that, the Bigfoot is like an more intelligent being than, say, something like a gorilla or a chimpanzee or something. I mean, yeah, you could possibly make that argument that like it fits somewhere between humans and, you know, great apes. And any kind of, I mean, there's a lot of like skepticism and muddied waters with, I believe they tested hair about a decade ago. Dr. Melba Ketchum, who's like an accredited geneticist, I believe, something like that. Someone that knows how to do this stuff. And the results came back, and it was like a hybrid, basically. I believe it's a female human with a male great ape type creature is what they determined. But again, I don't know all the politics of it, but all I do know is that whole story is very muddy in a lot of ways.
Yeah, who's banging monkeys? Jeez.
Well, and then also, do you guys, so something that we see in the UFO field when it comes to like physical evidence like that is there is a completely hands-off situation going on with the labs. They don't want to touch anything alien. They don't want to test anything. Even if they do the results, a lot of times they say that they purposely give very normal results because they don't want their lab to be discredited, or like these people don't want to lose their jobs coming out saying that. So do you see that in that Bigfoot community as well, that you have that same kind of thing? Are they a little bit more prone to actually looking into it because it is more nuts and boltsy, sciencey, flesh and blood?
Well, what's interesting about that question at this very moment, it seems like mainstream academia and the establishment is more interested in UFOs and aliens now than ever before. But to your point, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at with, is like, people want to protect the institution. They want to protect the agenda. They want to protect what they built their credibility on. And on top of that, getting funding to investigate these things that more than likely, according to these people, are not real. Like, it's like a cost benefit analysis thing, right? Like, it's like, well, we don't have the resources to look into this because there's no demand for the resources. I mean, there are like kind of eccentric um, entrepreneur types that have sunken a lot of money into investigating this type of stuff. But at the end of the day, when you break it down with how the institutions work, no one wants to put the money up. And even if they did, what are you going to do with that information? Science is still going to try to probably stifle it because it's protecting its agenda and its whole like paradigm. There's just so many variables in there that affect whether or not this is real. So it's not necessarily about a nefarious agenda by the government to cover this information up. It's just like, why would we look into that? Because even like, yes, if we discovered a body of a Bigfoot or a body of an alien and put it on a slab, that would be a profound scientific discovery, right? But how is the institution going to react to that? I guess and it's probably not going to be positively.
Probably not, no. But I think that that's anything that goes outside of our like mainstream quote unquote normal, right? It's the same thing with aliens. I mean, you see it more in the news now, but it's still like this very taboo kind of thing. So we're just beginning to talk about these kind of things, right?
Right. And it's interesting with the UFO stuff because it's almost like, okay, the establishment has now given us permission to discuss this. Whereas
Which
like
we find is
weirdos
so
like us,
stupid.
it's stupid, which it makes me skeptical of the whole thing. And I would love to go on a whole tangent about that, but I won't. But as soon as these institutions, I'll leave it at this, as soon as these institutions have been mocking and hiding these truths or these things worth investigating, as soon as they start giving you permission to do it, that's when I stop trusting the narrative altogether, especially from those people.
I agree.
Absolutely. That's why we don't like anything going on recently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or the nuts and bolts side of things in general, because it's exactly that way, and we find it just so dumb. It's so bureaucratic.
Yes,
Boring.
yes, that's a great way to put it.
All
but
right.
As far as like Bigfoot evidence goes, like there's a substantial enough amount to like pique my interest in a handful of academics, not to imply I am one, I'm just interested in the topic. But obviously okay, so the modern Bigfoot lore, like in our lexicon, came around in the late 50s. This dude Jerry Crew was working on a construction site, Bluff Creek, Northern California. Noticed some odd looking giant human like footprints, took some casts of it. The newspaper covering the story coined the term Bigfoot, and in a loss like the modern, how we understand it in pop culture today, that's basically where it comes from. That's not to say there's not eyewitness accounts and newspaper accounts going way back before that. But if you get into the eyewitness accounts or the journal entries and newspaper accounts, stuff like that, of like wild men going back to like the 1800s, there's so much meat for the skeptics to chew on for multiple reasons. So you have like, okay, yeah, people, Native Americans, like, dressed in garb or whatever. People were just more prone to going and living a life of solitude as more primal man. And then on top of that, just like what we see in the media today, like the newspapers are there not to report news, the newspapers are there to sell newspapers. So all those criticisms about the media that we just kind of defaulted to about the UFO stuff, those same skepticisms can be applied to the people trying to sell newspapers in the 1800s and reporting wild men, right?
So do you think that there's maybe a possibility that, okay, these wild men, right? Because immediately where my mind goes is like skinwalkers and Wendangos and like that kind of stuff. So like, I don't know, I feel like back then that a lot of that stuff was probably very prevalent. And so maybe that's what they're seeing, and none of that shit is related to Bigfoot at all.
Yeah, that's possible. And I mean, but that's not like that. There's definitely a more like paranormal camp or paranormal side to all this. Excuse me. So I mean, what exactly are you getting at with that question? So are we saying like, okay, are we analyzing this from mainstream science or accepting that the possibility of
Well, no, I'm just more saying like you're talking about skeptics like to use all of that information, those previous reports as like, oh, see, they could be talking about anything. It's that. But then also like with that same thing, like you can connect it to a lot of things though. Like I see that and I don't necessarily think Bigfoot. I think more Wendigo, like or Skinwalker or something like that. So I don't think that necessarily from the skeptic side, it's like the greatest like thing to be like, oh, well, it could be anything. Well, yeah,
yeah,
it literally could be anything. So I find that not, it's like what you were saying earlier about science. Like you want to disprove it because it's easier than to prove it. And I just feel like saying something like that is such a cop out from the skeptic's point of view because like, oh, it could be anything. Well, anything could be anything.
I agree. And I believe that there is a necessity for skepticism and there's a necessity for hard, scientific protocol. But I think that life is more fun when you're giving certain things the benefit of the doubt because I'm not a scientist, but I mean there is tangible evidence out there for this stuff, and that's the tangible evidence is what has had this handful of like legitimate academics kind of look into it, and the rumor has it that a lot of people kind of look at it in secret. They don't talk about it with their colleagues, things like that. So the big one I guess would be footprint casts. I mean there's like hundreds of these things. They're out there, they're consistent. They have dermal ridges, which are like the little lines on your fingers.
Your fingerprints, yeah.
Your fingerprints. And then the other thing that's consistent with them is what's called the mid-tarsal break. So it's basically this, it's almost like your hand, like your knuckles.
It's
in your
arch,
hand,
yeah.
In your foot, and it lets you, I don't know the physiology or the anatomy.
It makes you, it has you like roll your foot, yeah, when you walk.
Right, it lets you like push off or something. And those were kind of the two things that piqued guys like Jeff Meldrum's attention, who's like literally like some sort of like doctor in like ancient feet, which is an interesting
career path. Yeah,
is that pathology or something?
Pathology,
something
yes,
like
absolutely.
Pathology. And then
person
after podiatry, that's
podiatry.
What did I say before?
I don't know what the hell you guys are saying.
I don't remember either.
Pathology.
Pathology. Oh, that's like blood.
Oh, okay. Bree, what do you got? You got anything for me?
Right now?
Spoken in a while.
Oh, I'm just listening. I'm trying to really take in all the information.
She's literally writing notes.
Right.
Okay, so quick history past the Jerry Crew. We have Bigfoot term coined. Cast seemed to show what looked like dermal ridges, mid-tarsal break. 1967, you have the famous Patterson-Gimlin film, which we've all seen a million times. It's the one where they walk like it's Patty, it's a female, you can see it's a female, and people are like, it has breasts, it has to be real. And it's like, well, why?
Wait, before we move on from it, are you into that footage or not?
I think it's more compelling than like any other video.
Okay. All right.
Again, I'm just kind of like open to whatever with this whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm like your classic middle bitch, to use your term.
Which I've heard you've stolen before.
I think it's a safe place to be.
It is a safe place to be.
But yeah, I mean it's super it's like tenfold more compelling than any other video evidence out there, I would argue. And I mean, they've had costume people of the time of the late 60s like try to like comment on it. They're like, there's no way we could have done this. And if there's one guy, I believe it's the guy that did the makeup and costume for Planet of the Apes. He's like, the only person that could have done this was me, and I didn't do it. And I didn't, something like that. Yeah, I might have just butchered that quote. But
well, that's
and then there's some shady history with Roger Patterson.
There is, yes.
Who is the guy that filmed it. Again, this is in Bluff Creek, I believe, California, which happens to be the same area that Jerry Crew found those footprints. So that's kind of interesting on itself. But there's a lot. There was people that came out later on, I believe in the 90s. I can't remember the guy's name, but he came out and said that he was in the suit. And then like, so there's like, as legit as that footage is, there's a lot of like weirdness
around it.
Yeah, there's a lot of fuckery afoot. Can I say?
Yeah, a lot of tomfoolery. Yeah, you can say fuckery. Yeah, absolutely.
Tomfoolery.
Yeah, tomfoolery.
Okay.
So what do we have after that then?
After that, I think this is probably my favorite piece of evidence. This was like 1971. this dude Ron Moorhead and his crew. I think they were like on a trail drive or like they were hunters or something, but they had this kind of camp spot in the Sierra Nevadas in California. And they recorded these things. They had these like interactions with these noises out in the darkness, and a lot of whoops and howls and things like that. But then they got this audio footage of like this really weird, like guttural chatter. They call it samurai chatter, basically. So this is what's called the Sierra sounds. Let me actually play it for you.
We're gonna play it. Let's do it.
Totally worth playing. So this is just, I mean, this video is really long, but this is like the part where it gets really super interesting. So, I mean, that's basically the gist of it, but that was them kind of going back and forth with these creatures. And
were they also talking like a nonsensical language back to them, or like what language were they speaking?
They were just doing what you would do, like if you like bark at a dog, I guess.
Got you. They were just like kind of mimicking.
I hear the samurai voice now. Now I see. I was like, why would they call it a samurai chatter? Now I totally get it.
No, it makes it, so there's been like audio specialists that have like broken it down, in language specialists that were like, yeah, this seems to be like a language we don't know about. And if that's legit, I honestly find that more compelling than Patterson Gimlin film. Just
and it sounds like too, like when the samurai voice is like talking back, that it's very like questioning, like, and like, what are you saying? Like, what are you? Oh, what? It seems like very inquisitive.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought of that.
Yeah, it seems like, very inquisitive.
People.
Yeah, because it's like they're saying these weird things, and like obviously whatever it is hearing it and like recognizing that, you know, maybe it's a word that they're saying, and it's like, wait, what? Like maybe they're just yelling out broccoli, and then like the guy, the Bigfoot in the back is like, broccoli, like broccoli.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know how far back that huh, like that when your voice goes up like that for a question, how far back that actually goes. The inflection in your voice. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
I just feel like I could mimic that sound.
I agree.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're like. You can't, because it's a Bigfoot. Bree, let me check in with you, Bree. Like, based on what I've told you, I'm sure I've covered a few things you already know about. I know that you're the skeptic here. Where are we at? What percentile are we at?
I would say I've probably gone up like 3%.
Okay.
3%?
The audio, which is good.
Was it the audio took it back a little bit, you think?
The audio, to me, yes. I red flag the audio.
Okay.
But I will say, I think that with the Patterson footage, with the guy that does the Planet of the Apes thing, like him saying that, and the podiatrist comment, that to me sounds more substantial evidence-wise out of everything.
That's fair.
Like if an expert can't create that, then how could just some Joe Smo do that, you know?
Right.
Unless he just happened to do an excellent job, but I doubt that. I don't really see why someone would go through the trouble of trying to create something that looks so realistic and mimic how it would walk and move that well. So hearing those comments, that to me, I think is what brought me up 3%.
Yeah, and as far as the Sierra sounds goes, I just think it's really interesting because there's nothing like it in the whole Bigfoot world. But if the source of the story is true, like if it's not somebody creating a hoax in their basement on a microphone or something or whatever, if that source of where it came from I guess it's kind of redundant to say if the guy's telling the truth, it's true. But
No, but
you know what I mean?
no,
But
yeah,
it's like-
exactly.
No, yeah, for sure. I have heard some
because those-
crazy
those-
things about the Sierras, so I
Well, I was
kinda
gonna say,
believe that part.
Bree. Okay, so let's take out of our mind that that guy says that it's Bigfoot, and let's just pretend that he's out there and he's hearing these sounds. Do you think that what was being said sounds paranormal?
It kind of just sounds like some Japanese guy, like drunk out there in the woods.
what are they doing in the Sierra Nevadas, Brie?
Yeah, like, what were they doing out there drunk in the
I
middle
mean,
of the
I would go
woods?
out there. No,
In
I know.
Japanese?
And you would also fake an accent. You really would.
I
though.
would,
You really would.
which is
I mean,
why
this-
I was like,
keep in mind too, this is like out in the, there's like nothing. Like
No,
they
I
don't
know,
even,
out
They
there,
never
yeah,
even like disclose the location of this place. Like it's their secret little like.
What were they?
Did you
Camp
watch
out
this
sign.
on the Missing 411 thing?
Oh, this is on the the second missing 411, the Hunted, that documentary. They do cover this.
Okay, yeah,
But
because
I've known
that
about this for-
convinced me.
Yeah,
That-
that's what this is.
Yeah, so that whole thing was very convincing to me.
Yeah.
I will
What did they
say.
record that on? Like, was it like an audio recorder? Was it their phone? Or no, this was like the 70s. So like, like what
I
possessed
guess it
them?
would have to. That's a really good question, actually, because I guess it would have to be like some sort of like reel to reel or like a.
Yeah, so there
I
would
don't
have to be
know.
some sort of video
You just
footage
threw a
from
big
it, right?
wrench in the gears for me, actually.
Yeah, like, well, because I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, like, because it
Who
sounds
takes,
so
who takes a
grainy
reel
and
to reel?
interesting. That's what I'm
hunting?
And
thinking.
they look old fashioned.
That's
They're like
exactly
old
what I was
fashioned
saying.
dudes.
So if this is back like in this time and they're old fashioned, like why are you bringing like okay, let's just say it's a tape recorder. Why are you bringing a tape recorder with you out to the middle of the fucking Sierras?
Well, I will
They
say
have
this.
passed though, right? Weren't they like this spot? Like all kinds of weird shit has always
Okay,
happened to
okay,
them.
okay.
So,
So
maybe
they've-
they're like, this time we're
they've had
bringing.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to look into that like more extensively, like immediately after we get off the call. But yeah, that's real. I feel like what Bree said is true. Is that like they've had a history with this kind of
Okay.
activity in that area, and maybe they brought something along. I don't know.
It'd be
But-
interesting to see if they did do it on like a reel to reel because there would have to be some sort of video accompanied with it, whether it was just like pitch blackness or whatever. It would be interesting to see like that version of it as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that, but
I want to go to that
Um,
spot so bad. When I
I
saw
know
that,
where
I
it
was
is.
like, that spot.
Here's what we do. This video gets 1 million views. We take the proceeds and we go there.
We don't know where to go. Like you
We'll
said,
figure
it's
it out.
undisclosed.
Listen,
They
we'll
get
talk to-
there on
Mm-mm.
horses.
Excuse me.
Yep.
I have horses. That's fine. I can bring horses. You know that. But our cosmic alien guides will tell us where they go. You know what I'm saying?
not
Like,
trying
they'll
to
tell us
get-
where to be to.
I'm not trying to disappear.
now
411.
Yeah,
uh,
that's what this.
I actually went to
Yeah.
Mesa Verde last 2 years ago, and I was scared of
Oh,
Going
cool.
disappearing into a portal or a government underground base in
Yeah.
Possible.
Bree, you say you've been Bigfoot hunting before.
Yes.
What does that look like?
That was also to another place. Actually, was I in the Sierras?
It was an undisclosed location. You know what I'm saying?
It was an undisclosed location. I had to follow directions that were written. Because there wasn't an actual like GPS location, and you drive for probably about 2.5 hours at least without any cell service. Nothing comes up on maps, so it was like handwritten. It was scary as hell.
All
I
of
think
this
it.
sounds like the making of a horror movie.
Yeah, exactly.
No, yeah, and especially because my husband and I left like so late, so we didn't
It's, like,
get there
dark.
probably till like 1 a.m. And you're just like on this dirt path that goes up into the mountains for fucking days, and there's wolves, foxes that were like constantly running in front of the car. It was scary as hell. There was like a fire that was recent, so everything was like still smoking, and there's embers on the side of the
Oh my
road.
god.
We got lost for a little bit. We thought we were gonna have to sleep in the car. It was very scary. But
What
these
did the actual
group of
hunt
people,
look like?
well, so these people go to this spot all the time. And now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure it was in the Sierras as well. And so they bring all kinds of equipment. And at the actual campsite, they set up cameras, like 360 cameras everywhere, and microphones to pick up knocks as well.
Mhm.
And they also have FLIR and night vision. And of course, like the best cameras, they carry microphones on with them. And then, so they keep the cameras and the audio rolling 24/7 because they believe that he like walks around and like knocks all the time at night. And there's no one in this area. It's like just these groups of people that go. And so they will wait until I think like the witching hour, you know, like in the middle of the night. And then they will take trucks out and then like jump off and then just go hiking in certain areas that have been known for some weird Bigfoot activity. So I did that with them, and there was only one time I could remember where I got a weird paranormal feeling, but I couldn't tell if that was like a Bigfoot was near or if it was because I know that the land itself was like Native American land where a lot of war and issues happened there. And I do know in that area there's actual petroglyphs on these rocks of Bigfoot. They have, it's like a national like landmark out there where there's these old petroglyphs of Bigfoot on there. And so that was the only moment where I felt really uneasy. But again, I couldn't tell if that was maybe a Bigfoot thing or if that was just like a paranormal instance, because I can usually pick up on weird energy like that pretty easily. So other than that,
you got to keep in mind too, when these dudes like dedicate their lives to this or like really want to like make this all worthwhile. I forgot what the official term is because it's super difficult to pronounce, but it's like that thing where you like look at clouds.
And you see the shapes, you see patterns, and
then there's like another version of that. Yeah, there's another version of that that's like more like evolutionary psychology, where like our mind creates faces because we want to like see
our mind creates patterns,
other intruders or other people in our vicinity, things like that.
I mean, it could have just been the person I was with. One of the dudes also was rubbing me the wrong way, and he like worked at Area 51 and was giving me a lot of crap for believing in aliens, and also because the next next day he told me that they thought that Bigfoot, because they had recorded knocks on one of the nights that we stayed there. And he was like freaking out, like something pissed on the side of like where my tent is, and was kind of basically saying that he thinks that like Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whoever, is walking around knocking and then decided to take a piss on his tent. So then one of the guys looks back on the camera and it was him.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's
so that was like another thing where I was like, oh, okay, and I'm trying like, really hard to believe.
I'm sure you were on edge, like with or without the Bigfoot aspect of this, because it's like I'm in the mountains with these dudes looking for Bigfoot. And
yeah, well, I was with Josh, and one of the guys is like our super, super close family friend, and he's like super, like they call him Bigfoot because he's like so tall and he's like obsessed with Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. So I was with him, and I trust him, and I trust a bunch of other people there. It was just that one guy. So it could have just been his energy too of trying to like fabricate this story, you know, like, oh, he took a piss on my tent and then it was him. It was just like buzzkill.
Right. You know? And these kind of subjects, I feel like fringe topics attract fringe personalities. So applying that to both Bigfoot and the UFO world and the ghost world, or whatever you want to say, is like, are there crazy people in the world? Are there hucksters in the world? Are there disinformation? Yes, there are disinformation agents. There's all those things. And I would argue that all three of those things are pretty rampant in these communities, or at least take most anyone with a grain of salt. But with both aliens and Bigfoot, just the combination of everything from physical evidence to what seems to be credible eyewitness accounts makes me think there's at least something to this. It may not be like what we currently understand it to be as, right?
Yeah, it's like that thing with UFOs, how, it could be 99% of it could be government or bullshit, but it's the 1%.
Right.
It's the fact that there has to be I do truly believe that there has to be something mixed in with all of the stories that is truth. Maybe it's just that there's too many consistent stories.
Well, if one of them's real, then it's real, right?
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
If one of these accounts, I mean, it's not a misidentification, it's not a crazy person, it's not someone looking for attention. If one of them is legitimate, that means the whole thing is.
Well, and you think statistically too,
So
not all of them could not be like a true case, right? So like statistically, all these hundreds and thousands of people who have had these Bigfoot sightings, one of them has to be real if we're just talking mathematics here, right? There's no way that all of them could be no. You have to,
if you immediately remove all the hoaxers and remove all the like mentally ill people, which we have those. Like I've been to cons before. I'm like, on some level, these people speaking about aliens are, selling things to crazy people. Like that does happen.
Oh, of course.
And
yeah.
I mean, that happens in the comic book world too.
That's everywhere. Exactly. Yeah.
It's everywhere. But like you said, like if one of them, like but at the same time, there's like a subset of probably the majority of pretty sane, reasonable people that had an experience or are interested in the topic. And these you can't just default them as like dumb or crazy just because the scientific world hasn't caught up with this.
Absolutely. I guess
it's the same thing in the UFO world, though. It's the exact same parallel. You have people catching up to this now, and the government coming out and saying it's real. So all of a sudden, you can go outside and say at your family dinner, "Hey guys, I might think UFOs are real," and I think that Bigfoot stuff is going in that direction as well.
Right. Hopefully. Now this is where I want to like kind of get y'all's take on it, because I want to talk to you guys about the more, I guess, esoteric, like paranormal side of all this. Okay, so like I mentioned before, you have your flesh and blood camp / in the UFO world, that would be your nuts and bolts camp. There's a paranormal camp in varying degrees of paranormal camps of the Bigfoot world. In the alien world, it would be like kind of your New Agers and your astral projectors and people like that.
So Bree,
I'm in like almost every subgroup.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm everything.
Tell me about. I think Bree would be a good person to comment on this one. Tell me about like quartz crystal.
What are you talking about?
Quartz crystals.
Quartz. I'm like, what are you talking about? Who's going to
Tell
court?
me about like the metric system.
Bree's looks like she's been to jail. Let's talk about it.
Quartz aren't
well,
metric system.
I'm just kidding.
No, so what I'm getting at here is the overlap here is there's a high concentration of this kind of activity, whether it be aliens, ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot,
where there's quartz,
skinwalkers, where there's high concentrations of granite. What's in granite? A lot of quartz, or high concentrations of quartz in general. So you got like
sandstone,
the San Luis Valley in
limestone.
Colorado. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if, and I'm not qualified to say that there's a correlation. Well, there's definitely correlation.
There is.
There is. Yeah.
No, there is. We can say it. It's a fact.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because we actually just recently interviewed somebody, Maria Whitley, and we were talking about stuff like this, about how the ground that you are doing things on has these energies, whether it be rocks, water, all of these things, and you can map and see all of these things and how these energy fields work.
Right.
And how it affects people's lives, your body, everything. Depending on
where you
are.
The physical, tangible elements that we can see on this plane protrude some sort of venue or energy or something for potentially something else.
Yes.
Okay.
So are these hot spots? These are Bigfoot hot spots too. Now that I think about it, a lot of weird places that we talk about where they have kind of the everything mixed in. Bigfoot is always included in that.
Yeah. So if you look at, what is it, the 33rd parallel?
33rd, yep.
So I believe like there's like Jefferson, Texas is like a notoriously haunted town. That's where they hold like the Texas Bigfoot Conference.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably UFO science. You You move that line further west, you hit like everything from what was I believe that the crash, the famous crash in Texas was around that area in northern
Yes, it
Texas.
was.
Aurora.
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
Aurora.
Aurora.
Yes. And then you get to like Dulce in the San Luis Valley.
Yep.
And it's just like it's not necessarily like a perfect mile by mile lawn. It might
Yeah. It varies
what I mean?
slightly, but it's along that line. You also have all of the
37 too.
37, but then you also have all of the jails on the 33rd parallel as well. All the jails in Texas that do executions are all along the 33rd parallel.
It's Death Highway.
Whoa.
So 37 is like the cosmic highway is what they call it, and it
And
seems
the
like the 33rd is like the death highway.
Let's talk about the jail thing for a second. Is that like coincidence, or do you think that there's like a
so we did a deep dive on specifically the Texas's 33rd parallel. We did an entire episode on it, and yeah, one of the things that we found is while I was looking things up is that all of don't get me wrong, they're in other places in Texas, but the majority of them are along this line. And me and Bree kind of surmised that, I mean, this is just a theory that I think that we concluded. Yeah, sacrifices, exactly. So there's something about this 33rd parallel. It all goes back to numbers, 33 degrees Masons. So is it that they're using these jail cells to use it for human sacrifices?
It's the real.
For whatever reason, people are attracted to that area and built settlements, and there happen to be jails there, right? So like, I don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
No, it could be, absolutely. But me and Bree tend to see just how they're all placed in the way that they are. It just seems like it was very purposeful that they were put along this line.
Let me ask you this.
Such an occultism.
Does Phoenix fall in the 33rd parallel? Arizona?
Part of it, like the top of it, I believe.
Does it?
I think it's like
I feel like it was.
Well, okay, so the Four Corners is on the 33rd parallel, right?
Yeah, but that's not close to Phoenix.
So then yeah.
The reason I ask
can I find
is
out really quick?
Phoenix was founded, I believe, by Ulysses S. Grant, which is like super high-ranking Freemason, and there's all
Phoenix
this esoteric
Lights
stuff
too.
Yeah, Phoenix Lights. Yeah, Kurt Russell.
But I guess the point of bringing up that the correlation and the multiple eyewitness accounts of both UFOs and Bigfoot in these high concentration granite quartz
33.
areas.
It's on the 33rd.
Phoenix is right.
Phoenix.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
There you go.
I was like, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
A big part of the paranormal camp is Bigfoot's being interdimensional. And that goes from everything from like supernatural powers, like they can kind of float right above the
I believe it.
The ground. There's people that talk about portals, seeing them manifest from like almost like a predator style like portal thing, but they're like that kind of reflective. They're like transparent, but you can kind of still see the outline kind of thing. There's a guy named I believe it's Dr. Matthew Johnson. I think he's a psychiatrist or psychologist, and this dude, like, I feel like he tried to play it safe for a long time and just kind of chill with the flesh and blood folks. And then he just started coming out saying like, look, here's what I really saw. This thing just like manifested in front of me when I was hiking with my family in the woods, and we ran like hell out of there.
I believe it. And they're always seen with UFOs.
Yeah. They're always seen with UFOs. So it's like all this high strangeness stuff seems to correlate with everything from UFOs, ghosts, Bigfoots, whatever, Wendigos, skinwalkers, all that stuff. One of the more interesting things that, I mean, you can look up pictures of this, is like they'll find trackways of Bigfoot, seemingly Bigfoot tracks in the snow, and then they'll just disappear. They're just gone. They're gone. And then I've read stuff about like some people have this theory that, well, they don't really dimensionally cloak themselves. They have some sort of like very tiny reflective mirror type fibers on their hair, and it like reflects, the camouflage reflects the surrounding areas, and that's things like that. But the other big thing too is like when you go real deep into the paranormal side of Bigfoot, is there's people out there that like commune with them via like mind speak, and they're friends with them, and they can psychically connect with them, whether it be they're right outside the house or they can like tap into their Bigfoot consciousness from a distance.
I believe that. I can see that.
Okay, so
A
you're
telepathic
skeptical
connection.
about Bigfoot, but you believe that
No,
the
I've
mind
already
speak
changed
part
my
is-
mind. I
Okay.
already changed my
All
mind.
right.
I told you guys like 10 minutes ago. I said I'm a believer.
Oh, I didn't know you were
And it-
serious.
No, I'm dead serious, and you convinced me on the entire topic of if one of these stories are real, then it's real.
Well,
Awesome.
and I think too, like I'm the kind of person where I believe more in this extra dimensional being kind of situation. It explains a lot of things for me. Explains why we can't find them or their nests or where they made at. You know, it fills in a lot of gaps for me, but then it also at the same time kind of tickles into my alien side because I also do think that aliens are extra dimensional beings. So then I stop thinking about Bigfoot's necessarily being its own thing, and I kind of put them more in that alien world where it's just another
Me too.
species now.
I say, why not both?
That's what I mean.
course
Like
both.
the Bigfoot is its own species, right? So like, but I don't think of like a Bigfoot as a different phenomenon than aliens now. I think
No, but
more.
there might be a species of them that is not
Extra
Oh,
dimensional.
so you're thinking both.
Ah.
Like there could be
okay.
nuts and bolts,
Yeah,
not nuts and bolts, but like a scientific, real
Couldn't there
physical.
not be both in the UFO world?
Yes. So I was just going to say, so, you know, what's funny is Dr. Michael P. Masters wrote a book, and I can't remember the name of it right now off the top of my head, but his whole theory is that the UFOs that we're seeing are us from the future coming back to look at ourselves, right? So what if you have these extra dimensional Bigfoots that are coming back to either maybe help or aid the very dwindling Bigfoot society that they have now, and they're coming back to help pump up their numbers. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not high enough for this conversation.
I went real weird with it. I was like, let's go.
Hold on, I'm gonna get off camera for 1 second.
Okay. He's gonna, yeah. I get you. But you get what I'm saying, you guys? Like, what if it's the kind of that same thing?
Yeah, totally. That's what I'm saying. There's so many. I know that you guys resisted doing a Bigfoot episode for the longest time.
We
at
did.
least. But I've been trying
Breeze
to tell you,
fault.
I was like, there is so much here that like overlaps. It's not even funny, and it's so bizarre how there's like this taboo to try to connect it to with most.
I don't think
people.
I said no episode. Everyone thinks I'm just like no Bigfoot, no episode.
Yes,
Why
Breeze, you.
do I get the bad like?
Because you're the Scorpio.
That's
so I'm
me
just
too.
assumed. You're a Scorpio?
Hmm.
What's your rising?
That's why I'm so easy to get along with.
Yeah.
Look at you swinging his chair. That's why I'm so easy to get along with.
What'd you ask me? What's my what?
You're rising?
Rising.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, we're going to
Okay.
need to know what time you were born and where.
2 p.m.
Ooh.
ish.
No, we need exact
no,
numbers.
You have to know exact numbers.
Yeah.
I'll
I need
ask
you to
my-
pull. I need you to
my
pull birth
mom.
certificates.
We need to know
Yeah,
the
I'll look it
moon
up.
sign too.
Yeah, I want your moon sign, your rising.
I'll send you guys an email. I'll put it in the DMs. After
Perfect.
this.
Bree will do your birth chart. She'll send it back to you.
I want to know all this stuff because
Maybe you know what? Maybe you send Bree your info, and then we'll do an episode where we go over your birth chart.
I was like very much
I'm not
like
that smart. Jeez.
Yes,
Not
you
a-
are.
not a complete no nonsense guy because obviously I'm interested in this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I was like definitely like a curious skeptic. But now like with all the craziness we've seen and how the world works for real and like just pulling the scales off your eyes and seeing things for what it is and then just dipping your toe into spirituality, you're like,
Mhm.
holy moly, like
Mhm.
like let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater just because we can only see things or whatever, you know. So
Anything is possible.
Anything.
yes. You guys in as far as or just in general or in the UFO world, talk to me about orbs.
Ugh, Bree, take it.
Orbs are, well, what I think an orb is I think it is its own sentient being. I think there are two types of orbs, actually. I think there could be a light ship, and that's just how it tends to appear maybe in our realm. But I also think that there is an actual sentient orb, and we always describe it as plasma because that's what it looks like when you see it in real life. It looks like a solid orb, but if you look at it close enough, or in military night vision goggles, if you ever have the chance, sometimes you see that it is like
Pulsating.
not like not pulsating like a normal hard light would, but there's movement, there's flow, and then when it moves, it's like I always say it swims, but it just seems like it's just like flow. It has a certain movement that definitely puts it apart from a physical like object. If a physical object was moving in the sky, it moves completely different.
Is there any theories within the alien UFO world that suggest that orbs are maybe some sort of just like the remnant physical manifestation of something that has gone recently interdimensional or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like a leftover from like maybe a portal being opened or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
But they,
absolutely. That theory is definitely there. Well, you have to remember that this is all energy, and energy never dies, right? So if you're thinking about like some sort of like shift between the veil, something like
Mhm.
a plasma light or something like that is
Yeah.
absolutely something that is, I
It,
think, talked about with witnesses who have seen things like that.
Well,
even
that's
with
why I think
ghosts.
it's like not like we can't see what it actually is, but
Mm-hmm.
it's because of that whatever paranormal energy. That's just how it seems to transfer over into our world. And I also just think our conscious mind doesn't have anything to put into context to what it is that we're seeing. So it could also be that that's just what we're able to see.
Yeah, that gets into pineal glands.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys into like cleaning off, cleaning, decalcifying pineal glands? Have you looked
So
into that?
we had the topic, but after we had, I
We
should
had an
say.
interview recently with Andrew Gallimore, and we talked about DMT. He studies it, and
Mhm.
specifically the connection of using DMT to open up to talk to extraterrestrials and
Sure.
interdimensional beings.
So
Okay.
I asked about the calcified pineal gland because, some people say that's where the DMT sits.
That, and
But
if you
he
look
called
at,
bullshit. He's like,
I think
no.
one of the major, and again, I'm speculating here, but one of the major, like, one theory would be like, okay, the diet of Westerners, even during like colonial times when they met the natives, like,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, whatever they were eating or drinking or doing whatever, like, it like polluted their pineal gland.
Mm-hmm.
Even though people were more like acknowledging of the supernatural back then more so than they are now, but still, like, for a lot of these native cultures, like this Bigfoot stuff is like not even remotely up for debate.
Mm-hmm. It's like
Right.
just
Right? It's
fact.
like
Yeah.
it's just like, no, like that's real. Like some of them are like, yeah, it's another people, it's another tribes, and I'm like, yeah, it's like means like some sort of ethereal creature, like spiritual creature, whatever. But the point is, I just think it's interesting to think like our Western minds, a lot of them are less vulnerable to like what might be right in front of us.
Not just westernized, but just I think colonized in general. All of these colonized, very colonized nations are the ones that are having people who are more blocked off and not having that gland kind of open, your third eye being exposed and things like
Right.
that. So it seems like it's you talk about like these Native Americans and stuff because these are people who hold their past and their culture very prominent, whereas like here in America or other places we don't do that kind of stuff. We aren't passing on those stories from our old generation. We're far more interested in computers and Reddit and the
Right.
internet.
So yeah, at best, Western culture has like, okay, well, some of us go to church or temple or whatever, but most of us are really just kind of force of habit. These are some good lessons to live our life
Exactly.
by. This is kind of an operating system more so than like I really believe this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's all
And
fake.
that's a product of like rationalism and the Enlightenment and the scientific method and all that shit, which is a very Western movement, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then once that starts spreading around the world, that's when you're going like, what are these Native Americans even talking about? Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. But it's
Right.
like I isn't there something about how like when Cortez landed in South or Mexico or whatever, like the natives like saw his aura or something, like saw that they were like
Yeah.
purple or something. I'm totally
Mm-hmm.
They also
butchered
call
that,
them
but
like flaming ships too. Like they thought at
yeah,
first that they were like gods that were like coming from the ocean.
yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that could be like poetic license or whatever, but I don't know. I think there's something to that because these native cultures are just like, what are you talking about? Like, of course it's real,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know.
I believe their stories over anyone's
Over
stories.
anyone, 100% agree with that. Yeah.
And you even see it with the Aborigines in Australia with the Yowie, the Bigfoot of Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thing. And again, like Bree was saying with the cave drawings, I mean, I guess you could interpret that as a big. I'm not an anthropologist, but
That's
anyway,
astronaut theory that we're getting into right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I believe it.
No, but I do
They
too.
drew what they saw.
They drew what they saw, exactly.
So you can't talk about the fusion of UFO sightings and Bigfoot without talking about Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. And we could do a whole episode on this one day if you want, but I just want to give you guys some bullet points.
Give me the rundown.
Because I think that it's like, okay, Bobby said all this stuff. Like, what specific examples are you talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what happened in 1965, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. It's like 40 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. Okay. It's near like what's called the Chestnut Ridge of the Appalachians. Historically, there's like multiple UFO anomalies, lights in the sky, things like that. What's known as the Kecksburg incident, though, is the one from 1965 where like basically people saw a fireball fly from the sky from like Detroit to like northern Ohio and then landed in Pennsylvania, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And even reports of like metal debris falling off of it, blah, blah, blah. And what ended up happening, I want to ask you guys, what do you first think of when you hear this? The object has been described as a metallic object shaped like an acorn the size of a car with hieroglyphics.
Immediately, my first instinct is the acorn shape is very reminiscent to me of like maybe an egg
Nazi
shape.
bell.
I would say egg shape, very Nazi bell.
The Nazi bell.
And there, yeah, absolutely.
That's one theory, that like the whole Nazi bell incident, like for whatever reason, it ended up at this point on the space-time continuum. I don't know. Anyway.
Oh, well, okay, but no, there's something to that theory though, because it is said that the Nazi bell, the reason that it's like missing and disappeared is because it like blipped out, like all of a sudden it was there and then one day it was gone.
Right. And then one of the theories is like perhaps the Kecksburg incident was like it arriving in the future and falling in Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's a vibe. I like that.
So yeah, I don't know, who knows, but they say it was like acorn shape, had hieroglyphics. I don't recall the Nazi bell having hieroglyphics on it, but it's certainly possible.
I believe it did. Yeah.
It was on my list of things to talk about with other crafts that were that had hieroglyphs that Jamie and I were going to do an episode on a long time ago, because there's lots of UFOs. I mean, like the crash at Roswell, apparently one of the debris there had hieroglyphs on it. And then also with Rendlesham Forest, there was also hieroglyphs on that craft. So there seems to be something consistent with that, I think.
Whether it be legitimate like summoning of like the ancient world, or the military is going to put some sort of red herring hieroglyph so people dismiss it as something alien rather than what
language
the U.S.
one that dipped out
is working on, so China doesn't find out about it or something.
Or it could also just be the
Russia,
aliens numbering their spacecraft.
Yeah, it could be a number of things. But so yeah, this thing lands in this small Pennsylvania town. Military vehicles arrive within an hour. Later on that day and night, even more show up. Reports of this acorn thing in the back of these military trucks. So you have like hundreds of people from surrounding areas coming to see what's going on. Reports of government officials testing for radiation at the crash site, things like that. The official explanation was that they failed to find the object. What they claim to have seen as just mass hallucinate, like people's imagination. What do they call that? Mass
hysteria.
Hysteria.
Something like that.
Not it.
Well, I mean, they weren't like hysterical. They weren't like going crazy.
But I thought that's just the term that people use when they're like, it's mass.
The point is, the official story was they all saw a meteor in the sky, but didn't actually like make contact with the ground. That was all just.
And they made up the part where it hit the ground.
Yeah, like it was just like an optical illusion or something. But the
Made
point
up
is,
the
what
metal
I've noticed is that like once you have this like this paradigm shifting like watershed moment of paranormal within a specific location, it almost like the stories from there on out start to percolate, right? It's like this major incident that's been covered by the news, had multiple witnesses. It's like part of our town culture now. Like, and it's not something that you're going to get ridiculed for if you talk about the subject matter, because it's like already in the ether at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this happens a lot though, is like it's almost like the floodgates open and people are either A, you know, who knows, a portal opened up in that specific time and place and we have an increase in activity, or B, people that live there are a little more open to talking about what it is they've seen in those areas. So Kecksburg is a really good example of that. We have seen multiple UFO accounts, dish-shaped crafts, all that stuff. So the question now is like, what does this have to do with Bigfoot, right?
I was going to ask you that.
Well, here it comes. There was a major, and if you look up, I think his name is Stan Gordon. He's like the expert on this, and I don't think he's never really. Last I heard, he hasn't ever like experienced anything. He just like investigates it.
Mm-hmm.
So look him up if you're interested in this story. But in 1973. In 1973, there was like this major wave of both UFO and Bigfoot activity in that general region of Pennsylvania. It went from like they'd get calls about a UFO sighting, and then like a few hours later, a Bigfoot sighting, or they get calls about a Bigfoot sighting, and then a few hours later, calls about a UFO sighting. And then these reports started to kind of like be like, I saw a UFO and a Bigfoot like together.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, September 27th, 1973, there were two women that were like waiting for their friend to pick them up. They were kind of like in, I guess, like a backwoodsy kind of neighborhood place. And they saw like a white-haired Bigfoot run across the woods, like across the road into the woods on the other side, holding a glowing ball of light, followed by a bright object coming across the sky, projecting a beam of light in that general direction of where the Bigfoot was running to.
It's like,
Okay, wait. Yeah. Okay. Wait. So the UFO was shining like a light, like in a random area, and the Bigfoot was running towards that area, or
Yeah,
was the
that's how-
light
or
following?
I believe they saw the Bigfoot first. I'm not entirely.
Well, no.
sure.
I'm asking about like the UFO with the light coming down.
It's like implies that perhaps the Bigfoot was like being beamed back up to the UFO.
Got you. Okay, got it.
That's
got
what
it.
I take from it, at least.
Okay, and that's what I was trying to see. I was trying to see like, okay, where is this going? Okay, so like it's getting brought back up. So then, I guess my question is what is the significance of this like glowing orb? Right? Is this a way for the ship to find where he is? Like, you know, like I hit my button.
Fuck knows?
The tracker.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like a tracker.
It's his leash.
Or did he steal some type of plasma ball from down here? Did he come down here and like stole some fucking orb and was like, peace out, bitches?
Right. I don't know. I never even thought to speculate as to why the Bigfoot had a glowing orb.
Really?
Well,
immediately,
I mean,
that's the first thing I was
like,
wait, what's the orb?
There's so many layers of the onion. It's like, yeah. But so that one is like a relatively well-known, like kind of Bigfoot meets UFOs account.
Yeah.
And then, you know, another incident in that area, which this is where you get into like these theories about perhaps like the Sasquatch is like some sort of like scout species for like you know, the Greys or whatever, something like that. Some sort of drone that goes there. They're more equipped to deal with like the terrain of Earth, and they're whatever reason they send them down to retrieve things or scope things out or whatever. So
they're like the manpower. They're like
another family in the same region around the same time sees like a large orange ball of light in the sky making a humming sound. And then one of the dudes that was one of the witnesses drove towards it to investigate it, and when he approached it, he described this like whirling turbine sound followed by the sound of like a baby crying. Okay?
Well, that's common with paranormal instances.
All right, are you guys sitting down?
Yeah, tell me.
Okay, well, I don't want to build it up too much.
You already did. You already did.
You already did.
So
there's no going back.
Then from the glow of the ball, they witnessed this like tall bipedal object with glowing eyes walking slowly along the fence line and basically like stopping at each fence post. And once he stopped at one fence post, he would make a noise and like another one of the creatures would come catch up with him. And then he would go forward to the next fence post, make a noise. Look, I don't know. Don't hate the messenger. I'm just saying.
No. I'm processing.
Okay.
I'm like, what? Like my brain is trying to create a mental image of what.
Okay. I'll give you
like.
I'll give you an example. Okay, so it's like military people. He like stops at a post. He's like checking around, and he's like clear, and then and then like the next one
That's
comes
right.
up, right?
Yeah, that's how I see
But
it.
you said object. You said bipedal object.
Yeah, like a human shaped like
Light
tall
thing.
creature with glowing eyes.
Mm.
Did you not
It
guess
sounds
that
so
part?
scary.
Yeah. So what the guy does is he starts shooting at these things.
Of course.
And
Fuck, was his name like John Harry?
his name was Billy Bob Thornton.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Did he make out with his sister too?
Hey, these are just
goddamn
backwoods
creatures.
country folk in Pennsylvania in the 70s. They see like a weird glowy-eyed creature. They're gonna have guns on them and be like, I don't know what that is, but
So did he shoot
But
any
shoot
of them?
it.
so he shot at it. It didn't seemingly hit. What he reported was like a ploop sound, like almost like it hit water.
A poop sound?
Like a
A
ploop.
ploop. Like a ploop.
A plunk?
Yeah.
So like a
Like a
plunk.
cannonball.
Is that the
Like a
word I'm
plunk.
looking for?
Yes, because I thought you were
Kind of
saying
what-
a poop sound, and then you're like water. So like when poo hits water, that's
mean,
what I thought
either
you were trying to say. I
Tomato,
was like,
tomato.
what?
It would work either way.
It does
I think.
work. Yeah.
I like the plunk.
And then apparently these things just kind of like casually turned around and walked back to the craft or the glowing orb in the sky. So
So they didn't pay any
Like-
attention to the guns at all, really?
They're like, you stupid.
I guess I don't know. I wasn't there. I wish I was.
Ah,
And then lastly, the other one that's really kind of interesting from that time or that time and place was like again, mobile home in that area. I think it's called Superior Mobile Home or something like that.
Mhm.
A lot of the people in the mobile home saw this thing because apparently they were out kind of like hanging out or whatever. But this woman hears like a baby crying sound, opens the trailer door, and like there's just like a Bigfoot standing there.
whoa.
There's commotion. It runs off. And then the witness seemed to have claimed that soon after that, like this mysterious stranger arrived to investigate the situation and take pictures of the tracks and stuff. And then there was like a little boy that was out there like taking pictures too, and the guy like took his Polaroid from him. It's like that classic like asshole government Men in Black story.
Mhm.
And he took his foot and like messed up the tracks, like that scene in E.T., you know, like,
Mm.
and
Yep.
everyone was real pissed off, and they never saw the guy again. So at this point we have Bigfoots in this area. We have Bigfoots, we have orb holding Bigfoots, we have UFOs, bright orange balls, multiple witness sightings of all these things, and government, what seems to be government agents, all relatively within the same time in Pennsylvania in 1973-ish, 74. Other phenomenon in that area though are like giant panthers, thunderbirds, dogmen, and then even a report of like a large flying like reptile creature, like a dragon, I guess.
Oh my God, it sounds just like Massachusetts,
Mhm.
that
The
Bridgewater
Bridgewater
Bridgewater.
Triangle.
Yep.
Wow.
So that is kind of our more modern treetop overview of the Bigfoot UFO phenomenon. If you dig into it, just like in the UFO world, I think we've talked about this before, maybe offline, but how human perception and human consciousness, what we project onto the world is a product of like what we're used to seeing.
Mhm.
So you get into this stuff about like, well, they used to just call gray aliens fairies, or
Mhm.
we just call fairies gray aliens now. Things like that, where it's just like, well, Hollywood has given us this image to project on this, whereas back then it
Right.
was literally like little like gnomes or
String
whatever.
beans.
Yeah, string being gnomes. And the same can be said, I think, for for the Bigfoot phenomenon as well. Like it's just, or if you get into like really deep abduction stuff, you hear about like Mr. Peanut and the clown face man and all that stuff. It's that kind of thing.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because, me and Bree recently have been kind of grappling with this theory that there is no such thing necessarily as like UFOs and stuff like that. Like what it is like when you see a silver craft, it is your mind projecting that image or the aliens projecting that image because that's what you can handle or you can take. And, maybe now me and Bree don't see UFOs like that. We see orbs because our consciousness is different. We're opened up a different way. So maybe that same kind of thinking can be applied towards the Bigfoot phenomenon.
Well, I think that goes back to what we're saying. It's like who, and it goes both ways. The pendulum swings both ways, but like a person that's a skeptic is gonna, on some level, make sure that they don't experience one of these things.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. If you're not open, you can't.
Right. But at the same time, a person that's very open to it may not have experienced this, but thinks that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like everything in the middle,
yeah.
which I think there's legitimacy in the middle there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, again, like you have to, it's like anything else. It's like the fucking Secret, that book where you're like,
you
just
put it
project
out
into the cosmos, like positive
mm-hmm.
thoughts, and it's all going to come back. It's like the same kind of thing. Well, it's like, I'm thinking about, I am open to the possibility that there is a 8-foot tall, hairy bipedal monkey man that runs around in the woods. I think you're just more likely to perhaps come across it if you're like pretty convinced on the reality of that.
Mm-hmm.
But
I believe that.
To be fair, a lot of the more credible witnesses are these people that come forward and say, I don't believe in any of this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And now I do. And I think those are super powerful.
Well, that's like also, so in like the UFO community, you have all of these pilots who are coming out in the military and all of a sudden they're being like, oh my God, we believe your story because you're a military person and you would never lie to us.
See, I go the opposite.
See, and I do too, but in today's mainstream society, that's what they go towards. That's what all the news stations are talking about, are all these pilot stories.
If it's on Fox or CNN, Fox News, any of those bullshit, like legacy media, like it is complete and utter narrative control at best. At worst, in likelihood, it's lies to push some sort of agenda.
All right, I have a question for you, Bobby.
Okay.
Have you, like, what made you get into this, like, love of Bigfoot? Like, did you have some sort of an experience? Have you been out ever? Or is it just pure fascination?
I was hoping you would ask me this question.
Okay, good.
So in my fascination with aliens and UFOs kind of comes from the same place, hence why I don't know if it's like, I'm sure it's not my theory. I'm sure other people have said this before, but I feel like a lot of the things that you have, I'm not going to say traumatic because that's hyperbolic, but when you have like a real fear of something when you're a kid, like in your formative years, that like cultivates into like a burning passion and interest.
Yeah.
Whether that be from a real experience, making you wanting to seek answers, or just like we were talking about, being open to that experience, especially you're more vulnerable as a kid, and then you want to seek answers and figure it out. So all that said, here's what I base it in. One of the first movies I remember going to see in the theater was Harry and the Hendersons.
I've never seen that before.
It's cute. It's a cute 80s family Bigfoot movie. Probably one of the better Bigfoot movies, to be honest. By the way, I host a movie podcast called Not For Everyone.
Oh, no, we'll get to that. Don't you worry.
Okay, we did talk about it at the beginning. Anyway,
we should have.
There's a scene at the beginning where the family hits the Bigfoot with their car. This is the opening. They hit this big, giant, hairy creature with their car. It's like kind of curled up on a ball, almost like in a fetal position. You don't really see what it is. And they're like, well, we can't leave it here. So they put it on the roof of their station wagon. I know this sounds ridiculous, but this is how. But cute. What scared me to the point where I am like shuddering under the seats is the Bigfoot like expands its arms over the windshield while the family's driving, and you see its face, and it's like very humanistic. It was all like very what do they call it? Uncanny Valley kind of fear mixed with a giant monkey man screaming into a family's station wagon. Very similar station wagon to the type we had at the time.
Yeah.
When I was growing up. There's like so many things. So like I am like petrified. Like I literally like sat under the seat, like underneath where my parents' feet were, like the whole movie. I don't think we left or anything. But the point is, soon after that, it's like anytime there was like any kind of documentary on A&E or the History Channel or whatever, it's just like, all right, I'm not doing anything else today. Like we're gonna watch this until it's over. Or like, you know, you find yourself like renting those books in the school library, like that weirdo section. In a school library, it's even smaller than like a real library. It's like 4 books.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Multiple checking out of those books. So I don't know, like that happened. And then with UFOs, something similar. I read a book called, I actually ordered it off of eBay not that long ago, but it was called UFO Kids. It was from the Scholastic Book Fair, but there was a story in there because I was legitimately interested in UFOs, but there was a story in there and it was all about kids being abducted by aliens. And this is a book for children.
Why would they do that?
That I got through the first story, pretty scary. Second story, I made it maybe 2/3 of the way down the first page. Like, I can't fucking do this anymore. And I was like basically an insomniac for like 2 years, petrified of being abducted by aliens.
That is so funny.
No, I'm like, hey, let's party. Let's summon them. I want to see this shit, you know?
Well, you know, that's what's funny because me and Brie both saw like the fourth kind and it terrified both of us for like weeks. Like we were both crippled, couldn't leave our house. Like I moved my bed away from a window. So like there are these kind of stories that have these very visceral, real, you know, effects on us. And I think that was a turning point for us too, because once we stopped being afraid of it is when we started like really looking into it.
Right.
And Bigfoot was also in the Goofy movie.
That's
true. That's what I think of when he like hits. It's a good movie.
No, I know what you're talking about.
That's a vibe. I love that.
Powerline is the pop musician. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, and you know, to tie all this into the whole like ancient alien thing. So we have one side that dovetails into the ancient alien things, or vice versa. So we have the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, or the Anunnaki, the Sitchins thing, right? Genetic engineering chimeras, the what is it called? Like it's like the Enkidu is like the worker slave race that's engineered by the Anunnaki, so they can like mine gold to fix the atmosphere or something. And then if you want to get into like guys like Lloyd Pye, he kind of has this similar take on it, but it's a little more outside of like these Sumerian mythologies. It's, I guess, more scientific, but he has some really, he's dead now, but he has some awesome lectures on YouTube.
He's dead now.
He's dead now.
Rip.
R.I.P.
Rip.
Lloyd Pye. And then so you have that, right? And that's when you watch Ancient Aliens, the Bigfoot edition. It's like, oh, they're like hybrids, or they're scouts for the Greys or whatever, things like that. But then you have this like, and I'm noticing it more and more lately, is like you have like kind of these like biblical literalists and like Christian I think it's called Christian contrarianism camps that are coming up, and they're trying to like tie all this stuff into like the Old Testament, more or less. So in the case of Bigfoot, one of the kind of schools of thoughts is like, you have Genesis 6 and you have what's called the Book of Enoch, which is not in the official Bible, but I recommend reading it because it's like if they would have taken this angle in real church when I was growing up, I'd be like all about Jesus now, you know, but they don't. Okay. And most of the time, most Christians or people that Jewish people, I guess the Old Testament is still the Torah, right? Part of the Torah, at least, or the first 5 books or whatever. Like in mainstream religion, even like you talk about things like giants or fallen angels or the Nephilim or whatever it is, and it all parallels with classic mythology like Sumerian and Greek mythology. Like there's a lot of common threads there, which is interesting. But if you bring this stuff up as if it actually might have happened or it might be historical fact, and there was a time when I would completely be in that. I'm like, okay, those are just fun stories to live our lives by. Like they're these ancient texts, and you have to think of and you have to consider all that though still. But if you're open to this kind of thing, it's like the theory is, okay, so Genesis 6:4 reads the Nephilim were in the earth those days, which is like basically the fallen angels, right? and also after that, when the sons of God came onto the daughters of men. So they breeded with the daughters of men, bore children. And again, this ties into the Sitchin stuff to a degree, I think, too.
Yeah, I agree.
The same were the mighty men that were of old, the men of renown. So what this is suggesting is, if you tie it into Bigfoot, it's like almost like that Sumerian Sitchin stuff, but it's more biblical. And it's like there were all these like offshoot races. And I want to say this is like pre-deluge or something, before the flood. There were all these offshoot races. The sons, and like you think of things like David and Goliath. Like Goliath may have been some sort of like larger like Nephilim creature or something like that, some sort of hybrid between angels and humans. But that's when you get into like, if there's all these offshoots, perhaps Bigfoot is one of those things.
It's
or
one
if
of
you
those
tie
things,
to
yeah.
the Anunnaki, you get like, oh well, Bigfoot was like the first model that they created, and then it like escaped because they gave it too much power and stuff like that. So
they had to dial it back. It was like an experiment, that Frankenstein kind of vibe.
Yes, exactly.
Or they're like, just leave some of them here, see how long they can survive for, and then they're still kind of around till they come and check up on them.
Yep. And then you get it. There's the whole zoo theory thing where you like Earth is a zoo, and it's just
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
and then there's people that think Bigfoots are like some sort of like pariah species that they wanted to just dump off on Earth, like the aliens wanted to leave them on Earth, or a criminal species. There's all kinds of different directions with this. That's why when you say the paranormal, it's like as there are like these bullet points of what falls for paranormal, it just branches out into all these different camps,
little
as well,
things.
so.
Yeah. Okay, so after going over all this, Bobby, like, what do you subscribe to any of these? Like, what do you personally think it is, or do you prefer not to put yourself in a camp because you like the possibility of all of it?
It depends on the day you ask me.
Okay, that's a vibe. That's okay.
So today,
yeah, what are your vibes?
Oh,
where are we
wow.
at today?
Yeah.
Like I said, I feel like in the last year I've become more open to this kind of stuff. I don't think it's something. I don't really think it falls within like the biblical narrative or the Sumerian narrative, because it's just, I mean, it might, but it's just too like, there's too many like silly variables there that aren't that I can. But if you asked me that 2 years ago, it's like I would be like, oh yeah, it's a flesh and blood, like just relic hominid. They never found a body because maybe they bury their dead, or they live in caves, or like you know, no one ever finds a bear carcass laying around in the woods, because they usually go up to high ground. And I think those are all legitimate points for the like, it's just a really elusive, low population flesh and blood ape man in the woods. But then you go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole with this stuff. And like we were talking about credible witnesses, like people are coming out that don't seem like crazies, that are saying, yo, like, this is what I saw. And like, if you don't want to believe me, that's fine. But they're describing these like very paranormal anomalies with these creatures. So if I went in the belief, again, I'm just kind of agnostic and interested in all this stuff. And I'm kind of like Brie in the sense that until I see or experience something, I'm just not going to be fully convinced of any of it. I always consider myself, I'm so skeptical that I'm skeptic of the skeptics, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's like, I think there's a more eloquent way to say that, but I think that gets the point across.
No, that makes sense to us.
So because it's like, well, you don't fucking know. It's like that thing.
Exactly.
So I guess I would say, if you were asking me this 2 years ago, I would just say flesh and blood. Now it's like, because there's so much, I mean, I feel like the earth is almost in this like weird vibration where like people are just more willing to come forward, or accounts are increasing, and you can't keep that lid on as long. It's just ready to pop, you know? So I'm completely open to it. I'm not going to just dismiss it because it sounds crazy. Obviously, I'm on a UFO podcast, for Christ's sake.
Right, exactly. Well, I think that one thing that we should do is that we should all plan a trip and go hunting for Bigfoot somewhere. I know, because we're the same person, but I think that the three of us should plan some shit. And I want to do
a high concentration of Bigfoot and UFO activity.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, let's find somewhere, because you know, you're out in Texas.
National Park.
I'm in. Okay, wait, where's that at?
Colorado.
Well, I was gonna say, so Bree's in California, I'm in Vegas, you're in Texas. Somewhere along this line, we got to find a place that's a hot spot for these areas that we can all meet at. You know what I mean?
San Luis Valley is it.
That's where
That
I'm
is
dying to go.
Let's plan
just
this, you guys.
That's the place to go. There's even a woman.
Yeah, we did.
I feel like there's a woman in the San Luis Valley that like set up a tourist trap of like, this is where the portals are, and you like people come and give like offerings to whatever entities come out of the portals.
That would be fun to go see that though.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the UFO watchtower?
No, this is like a lady out in a field somewhere covered in what looks like trash, but it's like I don't know. Anyway, yeah, the San Luis Valley, if you're into everything we just talked about, especially the UFO fusion with all this, I would really look into that area because it's super fascinating.
Okay, you didn't hear us cover it?
Yeah, I've heard you guys. I'm talking to your audience.
Okay.
All right, let me rephrase that.
Like,
if you guys are into everything,
did you not listen?
Said, well, you acted like you didn't know where it was a second ago, so I don't know. But
no, she said she was dying to go there. That was
Jamie.
Me. I didn't know.
I don't even know the difference.
It's true.
Wow.
All right. Okay. So we're going to plan this trip. This is a thing that we're going to do. I think that this is like, we have to at this point. Bree quit her job. She has no excuse to not travel the world anymore. I have a job that I can leave whenever I want. What about you, Bobby? Are you flexible?
He must be if he takes cat naps all day.
Exactly. So we're gonna.
I can make something happen.
That's what I'm saying. We're gonna plan this. All right. I think we've talked for quite a long time tonight, so I think that this would be a good place to end it. So, Bobby, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you online, where the podcast is, what the podcast is about, all your social medias, and your Patreon.
Well, if you've made it this far in this episode, my name is Snotty Bobby. I'm the host / co-host of a podcast called Not For Everyone Podcast. And we do dip our toes sometimes in this subject matter, mostly because of me, because my co-host is a very angry, cynical man. But really, it's just about, we cover like pop culture, mostly movies. The whole premise really is just like we cover a silly or weird or cult movie of the past and kind of break it down as a way to explore our very flawed friendship. That's not what I planned it to be, but that's how it kind of evolved.
Yeah.
But it's highly offensive and it has a lot of smack talk. Like that's the whole appeal. The whole entertainment value is just me and him talking smack to each other.
I will say one of my favorite parts of your podcast is when it always gets to the very end. And I can always tell like when you've had like too much to drink and you're just like, you're letting the fucks fly. You're like, I don't give a shit about anything. And those are some of my favorite moments of you when you're just completely unhinged and you're just like, fuck the world.
I think that was episode 100. That was our second to last episode that came out.
Yes.
That was definitely a bottle of red wine went into that one. So.
It was good. I loved it. I think I remember texting you like, damn, I love Drunk You. That's my favorite.
Yeah, Adam made me take a break and leave because he's
That's
like,
what you told me.
You're just slurring and not making any sense. So we need to like pause for 10 minutes and come back. I was like, wow, thanks, Mom. So
how funny.
That's a vibe.
I didn't notice anything different listening to it, but whatever. That's what you're getting yourself into with the Not For Everyone podcast. It's on Spotify, all that, everything. It's on everything. We're not on Soundcloud anymore, though.
And if you guys want to give him money, check out his Patreon.
Yeah, I don't like to ask for money until
that's why I did it for you.
Giving it a shot. One tier to rule them all, $5 a month. You get some extra content. Patreon.com/.
And then,
for everyone.
And if that's not enough for you, I feel like you should start an OnlyFans account where you read maybe horror stories because you have a really good like radio voice. Maybe you can make a few dollars off that. You know what I'm saying?
Do you think people do have to like do it with like
just your shirt off, maybe? You know what I mean?
No, I think you should wear a Bigfoot outfit and like a bikini.
Well, to give you a little
preview,
in a
tub.
Here's a little anecdote of what my podcast is all about. My co-host gave me a gift.
Okay.
On the show a few months ago, I think it was for Christmas. And I've been tempted to read it live on the Patreon, but it's basically Bigfoot erotica, like erotic Bigfoot stories. Which I want to do it because I think it would be funny, but at the same time, I've like read paragraphs of this book. I'm like, I can't, like, I have a pretty depraved sense of humor, but like people actually get off on this shit. I'm just like, I can't, I just
100%.
I have to like almost work my courage up to do
I'm saying I think you start an OnlyFans and I think you would make millions of dollars. Oh, do you have the book over there? Let's see. You have quite the little like room in there. I like all the stuff on the wall.
I hide
I
it
love
behind
it.
stuff. I hide it. Yeah. This is called Gonzo Bigfoot: A Love Story.
Oh wow, I love those visuals.
So it is.
Oh
like,
wow, it's very gay.
It is not vanilla
I like
at
it.
all.
No.
So
All right, I'm obsessed with that. Send me some pictures of some of the pages I want to see.
I will.
Are
All
there
right, guys.
pictures?
We are going to come back next week for this. We don't know if we're going to do it weekly, bi-weekly. We have no idea, but we're going to record and do this. This is episode 1, and we look forward to episode 2 and see where this new journey takes us with Bobby. We're like super excited to have you on board with us and doing this, and it's interesting.
Wait, am I doing this regularly now?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, this is like a thing.
We already
Bobby.
have
Was
the
this the
next
job
one
interview?
planned.
Yeah, this is
Like,
like
We already have the next
I
one
remember
planned.
you mentioning
Might as well.
something like that.
Yeah, it's like
but
not
all
a
right.
joke. Like we're gonna do this.
If you're in the
as long as
calendar
we
more
can do
than
it.
twice.
Yeah, exactly. You're friend of the show. You're in
Wow.
now. But hey, I think that it's a good opportunity for you to be able to talk about this stuff. And I think that you make me and Bree think about things in a different way. So it's a good conversation to have.
It's a super lonely world.
That's what we're here for.
You know what I mean? Like this is a
Yes.
lonely interest.
Yes, 100%.
And yeah, you got to have your cathartic therapy conversations where people don't think you're a dingo.
Maybe we should start calling this like Bigfoot therapy. No, I like Cryptid Corner. No, we like Cryptid Corner. All right, guys.
Corner.
We love you all. Good night. We'll see you later.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you. Bye.
You're a blast.
Bye.